Hope the slide is visible to you. So today our topic of discussion is sample or sampling. Okay. So we are talking about research methodology. So when we are doing research and we have to collect data, primary data, when the research involves collection of primary data, you will have to collect data from sample most of the times. Sample means a small portion of the population. So sampling is a procedure in research. So we'll be discussing various aspects related to sampling in research methodology in today's session. So if you want to define what is sampling or what is sample, a sample is a smaller collection of units from a population used to determine truths about the population. So as we have defined here, sample is a small collection of units from the population. So here population refers to the total number of units with respect to a particular research or study. It does not refer to the population of the region or a country. Okay, that is what we normally use. The word population that we use in our general sense refers to the total number of population in a particular region or a state or a country. Is it not? But here, when we are talking about research methods, in the research, the population refers to the total number of units under that particular research study. So if you are doing a study on a say Maruti customers, then the whole all the customers of the Maruti cars are called as the population for our study. So why we have to do sample? What is the reason for doing sample? It is that when we want to collect data and analyze, it is not necessary that you have to collect from the whole population. Not necessary. One is that it is not needed. Another one is you can save cost. If you have to collect from a whole population under that particular study, there is a lot of cost that is involved. Another one is time. You have to spend a lot of time if you want to collect from the whole population. And if it is sufficient, if you are able to collect it from a small portion of the population, and then you can generalize the findings to the whole population from that study, then why not you can go with the sample itself, is it not? So that is the reason why sampling is done. So greater speed of data collection. You are able to collect the data at faster rate than collecting from the whole population. Resources, as I said already, the time and money factor you can save if you are going with the sample survey or collecting data from the sample. Gives results with the known accuracy that can be calculated mathematically. So the accuracy of the findings from the sample is equally good. So it is not that if you are collecting data and analyzing in a sample, the findings will be not accurate. It is equally accurate, and you can generalize the findings of the population to the whole of the sample study to the whole population, right? So then that's why you have to go with the sample. Sampling frame. So this is another term that you have to be familiar with when we are discussing about sample. Sampling frame is the list from which the potential respondents are taken or drawn. So I was talking about a research that, say for example, you are doing a research on say Maruti car. You are going to find out the satisfaction of the Maruti car users. So if that is the purpose of your study, then the sampling frame in this context is the list of customers, all the customers of Maruti car. That becomes a sampling frame from which you will select a smaller unit, few members, few customers you will select, which will become the sample for you. The sampling frame is a list of all the customers. So where do we get a list of all the customers? In this particular case, it will be with a dealer. So the main Maruti dealers in a particular region. So if your study is restricted to that particular region, then those dealers will be having the list of the customers. Or if it is you are doing in consumer research or retail research, then the register office where the houses will be registered. So all the population, the residents, they will be registered there. Municipality office. So there you will get all the people residing in that particular region. Class rosters or class attendance. Suppose if your study is involving students of particular institution, a college, then there will be list of students in the attendance register or called as class rosters. So that becomes your sampling frame. List of customers, as I told already. So taking an example of Maruti car study, if you are doing a study on the consumers of Maruti cars, then it is list of customers or any other like that. So that becomes a sampling frame. Okay. Some other terminologies. Population, I have already told, is population is the aggregate units under the study. So all the units under a particular study is called as population. Sample is a representative part of the population, a small portion of the population which should be representative is the sample from which you are going to collect the data. Sampling is a process of selecting sample from the population. Sampling frame, we have already discussed, is a list of all the units in the population from which the sample will be drawn. Census and sample study, these are the two different types of studies. Census, this word we are very much familiar, is it not? Once in 10 years, government conducts census. That means it collects data from each and every households in this country. So that is called a census. So when you are doing a survey by collecting the information or data from all the elements in the population, that is called a census or census study. So opposite of census study is sample study. So you are collecting data from a small portion of the population. So sampling, so while doing sampling, you should be clear with these questions in your mind. What is your population of interest? So without knowing what is the population for your study, you cannot go with the sampling. The very first stage in sampling is trying to understand which is your population, right? So that is very much needed. Then to whom do you want to generalize your results? So how to know which is your population? So now you are doing a study and the findings, to whom you want to generalize it to. right? So that will answer who is your population, right? Suppose if you want to do a study on the employee satisfaction, okay, employee satisfaction in the area of HR, if you want to do it, so which particular industry, which particular companies, employees that you are interested to find out the satisfaction, then all the employees and these findings of this research you want to generalize to whom, which company, employees. So that particular company's employees becomes your population. So that should be very clear. So it relates to your study. The definition of population is relating to your study. So the population depends on your study. So which area you want to do study and the findings of the research you want to apply or generalize to whom. So that becomes your population. Maybe that all doctors. Suppose you want to know how is the COVID treatment for the patients who are infected with COVID-19. How does the doctor prescribe, or how does a doctor do teleconsultation? You want to make a study, so that is very interesting area now. How does doctors do teleconsultation for the people who are home quarantined? You want to make a study. So then all doctors becomes your population, right? And it is not possible for you to collect data from all the doctors who are doing teleconsultation for home isolated patients. So what you will do, you take a sample. Maybe in the Mangalore region, you will identify some 200 doctors, right? Another place you will identify another 200 doctors. Another district you will identify another 100 doctors, like this, depending on the population, depending on the number of doctors in that particular region, you may take samples. So here, what is our discussion is who is the population. So here, if your study is related to that topic, related to doctors, then all the doctors becomes your population. School children. Suppose your study is related to school children. Okay, you want to study as how the mobile game usage of mobile games among school children. You are doing a study on that. How much time they spend on, how much time these young kids spend on mobile games. You want to study. Then school children becomes your population. Suppose any study that you want to find out and generalize to the Indians. Okay. Indians food habit. You want to study on the Indian food habit. Right? So if that is done, then all the Indians becomes your population. Suppose your study is related to women aged between 15 to 45 years. You want to find out their spending habit, purchasing pattern, something like that. Okay. Influence of culture on purchases among women. You want to study that. So then all the women aged between 15 to 45 years becomes your population. So like that, it depends on your study, who is the population for your study. And you should be knowing whether you can sample the entire population. So that actually is not a good question. So sampling the whole population means you are doing a survey. You are collecting data from the whole population. That becomes a census. That is not a sample at all. Okay. These things should be clear while you are doing the sampling. There are three factors that influence the sample's representativeness. When you are taking sample, there is something that is called as representativeness of sample. What does it mean? Sample should have all the characteristics of the population that you are doing the study for. So if it is having all the characteristics of the population, then it is called as representative sample. So how to ensure that these samples have the representativeness? So I want to say, or to give more clarity on representativeness. So I said that the sample should have all the characteristics of the population. Suppose the ratio of male female in the population is 45 and 55. Ratio of male and female is 45 and 55. That is 45% of the population under your study are male and 55% of your population are females. Then in your sample also you need to have the same proportion. It cannot be 60-40. It cannot be 50-50. It cannot be 30-70. Or it cannot be 70-30 or any of these three. It should be 45% and 55%, the ratio of male and female. And education background. Suppose the education background of your entire population under your study is that 60% are graduates and 40% are postgraduates, then your sample also need to have the same proportion of graduates and postgraduates. Income, same proportion. So like that. So all these demographics, or if you're dividing the population through psychographics, whatever percentage is in the population, that should be reflected here in the sample also. Then we say the sample is representative. Otherwise, it is not representative sample. So how to ensure that the or the factors that influence the representativeness of population? Sampling procedure. So you have to adopt the right procedure of sampling. There are different types of sampling procedures. So you need to adopt a sample procedure that will give you a representative sample. Then the sample size. You need to have the adequate sample size. It should be sufficient. It should not be less. It should not be more. Participation, response of the population. They should be included. Okay. When might you sample the entire population? So when you can do an entire population survey, when you can include, instead of sample, when you can collect data from the entire population. Which situation? All situation it is not possible. But some situation, yes, it is possible to collect the data from the whole population. When your population is very small, when your population under your study is smaller, then you can collect from the whole population. Not necessarily you have to go with the sample. Suppose you are doing a study on an employees of a particular organization, and the employees, total number of employees 500. Okay, then you can do collect the data from all the 500 people in the employees. Then it becomes a population for you. It becomes a census study. It is not a sample study. Okay, total number of employees. So it may be 1,000 also. 1,000 also is practicable. 5,000 also is practicable. If you have time and resource, time and money, then even 5,000 is a practical number where you can collect from 5,000 people, right? So it depends on the researcher, on the time and cost factors. If it is, you can afford it, then you can do that. But if you're doing on consumers of say some FMCG products or automobile products, where there are numbers is in lakhs and crores, so that may not be feasible. You cannot collect from that. But if it is in thousands, you may be able to collect from the entire population. When you have extensive resources, that's what I have said. When you have extensive resources, like including time and money, and also you can do give that much efforts, then it is possible to do from the entire population. When you don't expect very high response, Yes, when you are doing the entire population, it's not that you'll be able to collect from all the respondents. Some respondents may not respond to you, right? So that is how when you can do or collect data from the entire population. Sampling, some of the essentials requirement of sampling, it must be representative sample when you are doing. Homogeneity, there should be homogeneity among the units, that is, units should have homogeneity among the the population and the sample, that is all the characteristic of the sample should be represented in the sample also. Adequate samples, you need to have a sufficient number of samples. Optimization, it should have the the money that you spend and efficiency of the sample should be matched, that is optimum, that is optimization. Sampling process, so how do you go about doing sampling? The sampling process comprises of several stages. First is defining the population of concern, so you should know which is your population for your study. Then specify a sampling frame, so identify the sampling frame, get the sampling frame, right? Then specify a sampling method for selecting the items, so which is that sampling method that you want to adopt. So there are different types of sampling methods, so that's what is we are going to discuss in the coming slides. Determine the sample size. What is your sample size? Determine that. There are certain formulas which will give you what is the sample size that you have to take. So it depends on the total population. Implementing the sampling plan. Implement the sampling plan that you have selected. Sampling and data collection. Actually, go ahead with the sampling and collect the data. Review the sampling process. So these are the different steps involved in sampling process. Population definition. Population, though we have discussed what is population. So if you see the definition, a population can be defined as including all the people or items which is characteristic one wishes to understand. So what you want to understand, what you want to study, and all those people who have that characteristics becomes your population. So sampling methods, when we are discussing about sampling methods, broadly there are two types of sampling method, that is probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Or probability sampling is also called as random sampling. Non-probability sampling is called as non-random sampling. So in probability sampling, we have 5 different types of samples. One is simple random sampling, another one is systematic sampling, the other one is stratified random sampling, cluster sampling, then multi-stage sampling. So these are the 5 different types of probability sampling. So we will be discussing about it one by one in the later slides. And non-probability sampling, there are 4 types. That is, one is convenience sampling, then judgmental sampling, then snowball sampling, then quota sampling. So we'll start discussing with the probability sampling. So what do you mean by probability sampling? So probability sampling scheme is one in which every unit in the population has a chance greater than 0 of being selected in the sample. And this probability can be accurately determined. So in probability sampling, every element in the population has equal probability of being selected in the sample. So that is called as probability sampling. Then what is non-probability sampling? It is opposite of probability sampling, where every element in the population does not have equal chance of being selected in the population. It's called as non-probability sampling. Okay, so that is about the sampling, probability and non-probability sampling. So now in today's session, what we have discussed is, we have discussed about what is sample, what is sampling, what is population, right? What are the steps involved in sampling procedure, what is probability sampling, what is non-probability sampling, and we have named the different probability sampling and different non-probability sampling. In the coming session, we'll be discussing on various types of probability sampling and then non-probability sampling. So today's session we'll be winding up for now. If you have any questions, you can ask.